welcome back to Psychological Theatre. I apologize for a gap of almost a month. I had some changes in the life, and due to which I did not have access to my computer, I did not have access to other things. It was more like a relocation. So now I have everything back as it used to be. So let's continue with today's video, which would be centered on how we are looking at the world, and in that looking, what kind of tricks the mind is playing. Okay, it's a very important part of daily life, how we perceive the world. And an important aspect of that perception is in concern to sorrow, in concern to sadness. So the everyday sorrow or the everyday sadness inevitably affects how we perceive the world, how we look at the world. Why I only picked sadness and sorrow? It's because it's the central question in meditation. The central question in all respectable meditation traditions. Sorrow. So, over the years, over the centuries, over thousands of years, many kind of perceptions have been provided for the world. And I think almost every human being, and nowadays for sure, is somehow connected to those perceptions, in the sense that a human being is aware of those perceptions, because those perceptions have been repeated for thousands of years. They have kind of become common knowledge. For example, Buddha's first statement, the legendary statement that as you take birth, sorrow begins. Life is sorrow. Sounds a very sadistic statement, but it is not that, because that's not the ending of the statement. The statement merely begins there, and it finishes with a very strong mentioning that it's possible to be free from sorrow. Okay? So life is sorrow, but it's possible to be free from sorrow. But the last part you wouldn't hear so much, because it's less common. The first part is very common. There will be loads of t-shirts. Life is pain, life is sorrow, this kind of common perceptions. And they are very common. Another one could be the world is an illusion. Okay? This is also a very common statement that has been passed on in the tradition, specifically meditation tradition, where the teacher is pointing out to the fact that the world is not real. In the Indian tradition, there is also another beautiful statement. Maybe everyone might not be aware of it, but at least in the Indian tradition, they say the world is a dream of the God. That God is dreaming, and his dream is what we call the world, the universe. So these are some of the common aspects of those perceptions that have become very common in our daily life. Doesn't matter where you live in the world, someone will tell you that life is hard, life is challenging. Or if you have read a bit of philosophy, the world is an illusion, it doesn't exist, and everything. So all these perceptions have become so common that those statements have lost their impact on the human mind. Okay? Maybe when those statements were said, those were said to a student who has been doing tremendous amount of research in the questioning of consciousness, the questioning of human psychology, and at some point of the research, of the questioning, the teacher might have felt that it was right to use that statement for that student, and the teacher would have said that statement, and those statements were maybe then recorded by other students who were tasked to note down things maybe that the teacher is speaking, so they can be traditionally handed down to other students. Now, one thing that all these statements have done is they have tried to offer something which is totally of a sense of giving a shock to the mind. When the mind hears the statement, nowadays those statements don't give a shock to the mind because the mind has become tremendously used to them. The mind has heard them thousands of times on multiple videos, YouTube videos or books, that now those statements have lost the impact that they could have if they were potentially said to a right mind. Yeah. Now, a lot of the words that I'm using here in the last few minutes could have multiple meanings for people out now. How someone would say, what is the right mind and everything, and all those meanings would become separate videos actually. So I'm seeing it, but I'm not really diverting myself from the central question at the moment. Otherwise, yeah. So all those statements were directed to the students who were at that stage that they could grasp the what is the right word here? Who could grasp the fact of that statement? Let's put it this way. I wouldn't want to use the word depth because, again, that word depth has been so corrupted. Everyone has used it so much that people have lost the meaning of that word. So fact maybe is a better word at the moment, that the fact of the statement, if a student is able to see. So, but when an untrained mind, untrained not in science, in mathematics, a mind could be totally trained in science and mathematics, but still could be untrained in self-inquiry. So an untrained mind, when listens to that statement, ends up with a totally distorted meaning of that statement. And if you would look at major philosophical books from different cultures, you would see this distortion happening very easily. That if you really spend a lot of time in understanding them, then you start to see the actual meaning of those statements. But if you don't do that, then usually a rough translation by society has always been distorted, has always been totally, drastically a big disaster, you can say. So for a common mind, those statements have become so every day, a thing which is happening every day, usual, let's say, that the common mind has lost its ability to sense the sharpness of those statements. The common mind has found a way to protect itself from the sharpness of those statements, from the attack of those statements. Those statements come to you and they had a purpose to affect the psychological center, the ego. But because of so much of repetition, because of so much of that, they have become so common and usual to the ears, to the mind, to the eyes, that those statements no longer do the job that they were intended to do. So the mind has found a clever way of putting meanings in those statements, a meaning that does not exist there, but a meaning that sounds that it might be the right meaning. I would try to put it in more clean words, that the common mind has found a way to put meanings into those statements, a meaning with which you could have a certain sense of satisfaction, that yes, this meaning would probably be the right meaning of the statement. Even though the common mind doesn't know the real meaning of the statement, it has satisfied itself with its own meaning that it has given to it. Now, one central aspect of this disaster is that the mind has cleverly performed a trick which it loves to perform. It's the favorite trick of the mind, which it has been performing since all evolution. And that trick is to protect its center. The mind would say, yes, the saints have been totally correct in saying that the world is illusion. I get it. I understand it. I know it's all just a shadow. It's just a dream. But the mind totally ignores the fact, which is also the central question of meditation, and that is, for whom? For whom is the world a dream? And if the world is a dream, then you are also part of the world, so you must also be the dream. Shouldn't, right? But here is where the mind plays the trick of protecting itself. It says, no, I'm not a dream. I'm real. But whatever I see is a dream, because the saints have said so. Right? Mr. Krishnamurti has repeated it many times. I am the world and the world is me. I am the world and the world is me. So, if the world is a dream, then I must also be a dream. I'm part of the world. I'm not a separate entity. And if the world is real, then I'm also real. Right? So, you have to stand on one side of the boat. Either you stand that me and the world both are unreal, or you stand on the side that me and the world are both real. But it's totally mischievous to say, I'm real, but the world is not. This is where You even lose the scientist. A scientist would not walk with you after saying this statement because you've done a logical fallacy. So you can pick whatever side you want, and it's more reasonable to pick the side where you say me and the world are both real, because that is what your general understanding of life is. So it's better to start from there. So the mind protects itself, its center, in these statements. The mind hears these statements, but it totally protects itself. It doesn't even raise the question that what happens to me? Okay? If life is sorrow, as Buddha has said, then what about me? I must also be sorrow, right? I must not be different from sorrow then, because I am life. Okay? Life is not my feature, it is my whole being. I am life in that sense. So, the mind has found a beautiful way of protecting itself. And that is the real reason those statements have lost their sharpness. If the mind includes itself in those statements, then suddenly those statements will become very sharp. And then suddenly you have to confront those statements face to face. Then the moment you say that the world is an illusion, the world is a shadow world or whatever, then I'm also a shadow, I'm also an illusion. But I don't feel like I'm an illusion. I feel like I'm real. So when the mind does not include itself in that statement, it protects itself from facing that statement. But when it includes itself in that statement, now the biggest thing arises that if the world is illusion, then I'm also illusion, but I don't feel like I'm an illusion, right? Now the mind would put up a fight against that statement. Then the mind would argue, no, look, but if I'm an illusion, if I'm a shadow, then why do I sense this table? Why do I see all this and this? Then questions will come, right? And the moment those questions will come, the teacher would answer for those questions. That's how the tradition of meditation schools have been. And this is actually quite good. The moment the mind starts to ask questions, then the teacher can do something with that mind, because then the mind is making an effort to know the fact of the statement, to know the truth of the statement. And in this scenario, the teacher is lucky, I would say, because then the teacher can do a lot of things. Then question after question, the teacher can answer, and the questions of the mind will drop. And if eventually the teacher ends up proving that, yes, you and the world included together are not real, then the mind has to accept it, because it has been shown to it step by step in a logical way. But the shamefulness is with the mind which does not ask the question. It's the mind which just quietly accepts. Yes, it's a statement of the saint, I must accept it. It's a very beautiful statement, it's a very pure statement, and I would just accept it. Now, this is the biggest culprit. This kind of mind, with this kind of mind, you cannot do anything. Because this kind of mind is dodging that statement. It's dodging to face that statement. And hence, this kind of mind keeps on protecting itself in that dodge. I hope you're understanding this. So, the statements of the great teachers, whether it be any great teacher, okay, let's not take sides here. they are said to be timeless, that it doesn't matter in which time they are used. In time, I mean actual times, like 2000 years ago. It's not that Buddha's statement was making sense 2000 years ago, but it doesn't make sense today. It's not like fashion, that kind of fashion was making sense that time, but today is a different fashion. It doesn't make sense. So the statement can still have a tremendous amount of impact, a tremendous amount of interaction with your mind, with your ego, if you really face the statement head on. The more honestly you face the statement, the more the statement is able to do something on you. So don't dodge the statement. Don't just accept it straight away. Don't just say, yes, it's the statement from my tradition. I accept it. This is perfect. Blah, blah, blah. And you keep living the way you're living. So, when the mind does not include itself, it excludes itself and includes everything else. The world is an illusion, blah, 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 everything. That is a trick of the mind to save itself. Don't fall for that trick. Try to see this straight away, up front. And include yourself in that. Truth is a pathless land. It's a statement by Mr. Krishnamurti again. If you just accept the statement, then you just wasted the statement. It's just no use. But when you face the statement, then you start to see what content the statement carries with it, what implications the statement carries with it. And as those implications open up, you see that the impact of the statement increases by many folds. So, try to see that the mind is always and always and always trying to protect itself. This is the central movement of the mind. It would try to show itself to be very rational, very logical and everything. But behind all that, it would be trying to protect its center, the ego. So, always be aware of this movement of protection of the self. If you can do that, the rest happens by itself. Because this is the corruption, the central corruption. And if you can protect yourself from the central corruption, the rest is natural. Again, please write your comments about if you have any questions. If I was not able to make something clear and you would like a deeper explanation on that, please write to me in the comments, and I would see you again next week with a new topic. And if there are certain topics that you feel we should cover, or if there are some books that you would think which would be really helpful, then you could suggest and we could start on them as well. Okay? Thank you very much for your time.